November 24, 1944, 21st Bomber Command Headquarters, Saipan, Mariana Islands. The mission briefing room fell silent. Major Robert K. Morgan, pilot of the famous Memphis Belle, now commanding Dauntless Doi, prepared for takeoff. Brigadier General Emmett O. Jr. would occupy the co-pilot seat as mission commander. Target: Musashino Aircraft Engine Factory, Tokyo. Distance: 3,000 miles round trip. Fuel reserves: minimal. 111 B-29 Super Fortresses would launch from newly constructed runways carved from Pacific coral. What none of them knew was that this single mission would begin the systematic destruction of an entire nation's ability to wage war. The Pacific War had taught American strategists that Japan's home islands were not just the enemy's final stronghold, they were workshops. Destroy those workshops, and the imperial war machine would grind to a halt. The Boeing B-29 Super Fortress program had consumed more resources than any other weapon system in American history. At $3.7 billion, it exceeded even the Manhattan Project's atomic bomb development. The investment represented a calculated gamble that strategic bombing could bring Japan to its knees without invasion. Japanese cities presented unique vulnerabilities. Unlike European cities built of stone and concrete, Japanese urban areas consisted primarily of wood and paper structures. Narrow streets, densely packed buildings, and inadequate firefighting equipment created conditions ripe for catastrophic fires. Industrial production was decentralized across thousands of small workshops embedded within residential districts. Strike the cities, and you would strike the war factories. General Henry Hap Arnold's vision for the 20th Air Force was revolutionary. For the first time in military history, a strategic bombing force would operate independently, reporting directly to the Joint Chiefs of Staff rather than theater commanders. The B-29s would function as America's third military service before the Air Force officially existed. The B-29 Super Fortress stretched 99 feet from nose to tail, with a wingspan of 141 feet. 4 Wright 3550 duplex Cyclone engines, each producing 2,200 horsepower, could lift 140,000 pounds of aircraft and ordnance to altitudes exceeding 31,000 feet. Pressurized crew compartments, remote-controlled gun turrets, and an advanced central fire control system represented technological leaps that made previous bombers obsolete. Major General Curtis Emerson LeMay arrived at 21st Bomber Command on January 20, 1945. At 38 years old, LeMay had already earned a reputation as the most innovative tactical mind in American strategic bombing. His efficiency reports from the European theater described him as ruthlessly competent and methodically precise in planning and execution. LeMay's childhood in Ohio had been marked by poverty and determination. He worked graveyard shifts at a steel foundry to pay for engineering courses at Ohio State University. That blue-collar work ethic, combined with an engineer's analytical mind, would transform strategic bombing doctrine. Each B-29 could carry 20,000 pounds of bombs. With proper organization, 500 aircraft could deliver 5,000 tons of ordnance in a single mission. The new M69 incendiary bomb, developed at Harvard University and tested at Dugway Proving Ground in Utah, contained napalm gel that would stick to any surface and burn at 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. Colonel Thomas Power, commanding the 314th Bombardment Wing, had studied Japanese construction methods extensively. Traditional Japanese buildings used no nails, relying instead on interlocking wooden joints. Tatami mat floors, paper walls, and wooden support beams created structures that would ignite like kindling. A single M69 could destroy a house. Thousands of M69s could destroy a city. Japan's air defense system in 1944 consisted of approximately 375 fighter aircraft assigned to 3 air divisions protecting the home islands. The Nakajima Ki-44 Shoki and Kawasaki Ki-61 High represented Japan's best high-altitude interceptors, but they struggled to reach the B-29s operating above 25,000 feet. Lieutenant General Masakazu Kawabe commanded the Air General Army responsible for defending Japanese airspace. A veteran of campaigns in China and Burma, Kawabe understood that Japan's fighter force was inadequate against the American bombers. Fuel shortages limited training flights to mere hours per month. Experienced pilots had been lost over the Pacific Islands. Their replacements were teenagers with minimal flight hours. The Japanese anti-aircraft artillery consisted of Type 88 75mm guns with a maximum ceiling of 25,000 feet and Type 3 120mm guns capable of reaching 30,000 feet. But accuracy at maximum altitude was poor, and ammunition supplies were critically limited. Tokyo possessed hundreds of anti-aircraft guns, the densest concentration in Japan, while most other cities had fewer than 100. Japan's greatest vulnerability remained its fire services. Tokyo's fire department operated 280 hand pump engines and only 3 aerial ladder trucks for a metropolitan area housing 7 million people. Water pressure in most districts was insufficient for fighting large fires. Air raid shelters were virtually non-existent, as the government believed their construction would damage civilian morale. The November 24th attack on Tokyo achieved minimal results but revealed critical problems. Only 24 of 111 B-29s actually bombed the primary target, the others fighting powerful jet stream winds, a phenomenon observed by Japanese meteorologists before the war, but unexpected by Allied planners, scattered their bombs across the Tokyo metropolitan area. These high-altitude winds, reaching 200 miles per hour, pushed bombers off course and made accurate bombing nearly impossible. 17 aircraft had to ditch or make emergency landings due to fuel exhaustion. Brigadier General Haywood Hansell persisted with high-altitude precision bombing through December and January. Results remained disappointing. Cloud cover obscured targets on most days. The newly discovered intensity of the jet stream scattered bomb patterns across miles of empty countryside. Mechanical failures plagued the complex R-3350 engines, with many aircraft aborting missions due to engine fires. By January 1945, the 21st Bomber Command had flown 14 missions against Japan, dropping 1,385 tons of bombs while losing 41 B-29s. At this rate, the entire B-29 force would be depleted before significantly damaging Japanese industry. General Arnold's patience had reached its limit. On January 20th, he relieved Hansell and appointed Curtis LeMay as commander of the 21st Bomber Command. LeMay's orders were simple: produce results or face replacement. Arnold had had his 4th heart attack of the war, and he needed vindication for the massive B-29 investment before Congress questioned the program. LeMay spent 3 weeks analyzing every aspect of B-29 operations. He flew combat missions personally, sitting in the co-pilot seat to observe crew procedures and enemy responses. He studied weather patterns, Japanese industrial reports, and damage assessments from previous raids. His conclusion was revolutionary. Everything about American bombing tactics needed to change. On February 4, 1945, LeMay ordered his first experimental incendiary raid against Kobe. 129 B-29s dropped 159 tons of incendiaries and 13 tons of fragmentation bombs from high altitude. Results were promising, but not decisive. Cloud cover had limited accuracy, but where incendiaries found their mark, entire city blocks burned. The February 25th raid on Tokyo proved more successful. 174 B-29s dropped 453.7 tons of incendiaries, destroying approximately 1 square mile of the city. Post-raid reconnaissance showed that fire had succeeded where high explosives had failed, but Lame knew these results were still insufficient. The breakthrough came from statistical analysis by the Operations Analysis Section. Data revealed that B-29 losses to Japanese fighters and anti-aircraft fire were actually lower at night and at altitudes below 10,000 feet. Japanese night fighters were virtually non-existent. Anti-aircraft guns were designed for high-altitude engagement and could not depress sufficiently to track low-flying aircraft. Lame made a decision that shocked his staff. The B-29s would abandon their defensive armament except for tailguns. They would fly at night individually rather than in formation, at altitudes between 5,000 and 9,000 feet. The rate saved by removing guns and ammunition would be replaced with additional incendiary bombs. Each aircraft's bomb load would increase from 5,000 to 12,000. March 9, 1945, 17:35 local time, the first B-29 lifted off from Northfield, Guam. Operation Meetinghouse had begun. 334 super fortresses from the 73rd, 313th, and 314th bombardment wings would converge over Tokyo in the largest raid yet attempted. The target area measured 3 by 4 miles in Tokyo's Shitamachi district, containing an estimated 750,000 residents and thousands of small factories. Pathfinder aircraft from the 314th Wing arrived over Tokyo at 12:08 a.m. on March 10th. Flying at 5,000 feet, they marked the target area with M47 incendiary bombs, creating a flaming X visible from 50 miles away. The main force followed, dropping their bombs at intervals calculated to create overlapping fire zones. The M69 incendiary bombs functioned exactly as designed. Each 500-pound cluster broke apart at 2,000 feet, scattering 38 individual bomblets across a 500-foot area. The bomblets punched through tile roofs and ignited 3 seconds later, spraying napalm gel in 100-foot arcs. Within 30 minutes, hundreds of individual fires had merged into a general conflagration. Surface winds of 45 miles per hour, generated by an approaching cold front, transformed the fires into a firestorm. Temperatures at ground level exceeded 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. The superheated air created massive updrafts that tossed B-29s like toys, forcing pilots to fight for control. Several aircraft returned with their aluminum skin surfaces warped from the heat. By dawn on March 10th, 15.8 square miles of central Tokyo had been reduced to ashes. Conservative U.S. estimates placed the death toll at 83,793, though Japanese sources suggest the figure may have exceeded 100,000. Over 40,000 were injured, and more than 1 million left homeless. It was the deadliest air raid in human history. The success of Operation Meetinghouse transformed American strategy overnight. Lame immediately planned follow-up raids, while his intelligence officers assessed the psychological impact on Japanese leadership. Radio intercepts indicated panic within the Japanese government. Emperor Hirohito personally toured the devastated areas, reportedly weeping at the destruction. On March 11th, 313 B-29s struck Nagoya, destroying 2 square miles of the city. March 13th saw 274 super fortresses attack Osaka, creating a firestorm that consumed 8 square miles. March 16th brought 331 bombers to Kobe, destroying 3 square miles. March 19th concluded the 10-day blitz with another Nagoya raid involving 290 aircraft. In 10 days, Vecti Bomber Command had destroyed 32 square miles of Japan's 4 largest cities, killed over 150,000 people, and made millions homeless. But the cost was becoming apparent. Crews were exhausted. Maintenance units worked around the clock to keep aircraft operational. Most critically, the command had exhausted its supply of incendiary bombs. Japanese response evolved rapidly. Fighter pilots developed ramming tactics, deliberately crashing into B-29s in suicide attacks. Anti-aircraft batteries repositioned to engage low-altitude targets. Civil defense units distributed sand and water buckets to residents, though these proved useless against napalm. Japanese propaganda began preparing the population for the decisive battle for the homeland. The Okinawa invasion in April forced a temporary shift in B-29 operations. From April 17th to May 11th, the super fortresses flew 2,114 sorties against Kyushu airfields to suppress kamikaze attacks on the invasion fleet. These tactical missions frustrated LeMay, who believed continued strategic bombing could force surrender without invasion. May 23, 1945, marked the resumption of strategic firebombing with new intensity. LeMay now commanded 510 operational B-29s organized into 5 bombardment wings. The 58th Wing had transferred from China, Burma, and India, and the 315th Wing had arrived with specialized radar-equipped aircraft for night operations. The May 23rd raid sent 558 B-29s against Tokyo, the largest formation yet assembled. Pathfinders marked multiple aim points across the southern districts untouched by the March raid. The bombers dropped 3,646 tons of incendiaries, creating multiple firestorms that merged into a single conflagration covering 5.3 square miles. May 25th brought the climactic raid. Nearly 500 to 600 B-29s returned to Tokyo, targeting the governmental district around the Imperial Palace, though the palace itself was off-limits by order of Secretary of War Henry Stimson. The surrounding ministries and military headquarters were legitimate targets. The raid destroyed another 16.8 square miles, effectively eliminating Tokyo as a functioning capital. The sight of hundreds of super fortresses over Tokyo in daylight shattered Japanese morale. Pilot Tsuneo Hitoshi of the 244th Fighter Squadron later wrote, "We could only watch helplessly as they destroyed our city. There were too many to attack, like trying to stop a tsunami with your bare hands." By late May, 21st Bomber Command was launching raids of 500 or more B-29s every other day. Yokohama, Kawasaki, and smaller cities fell to the incendiary onslaught. Japanese air opposition had virtually ceased. Most remaining fighters were being hoarded for kamikaze attacks during the anticipated invasion. By August 1945, the B-29 force had grown to over 1,000 aircraft operating from the Marianas. 66 of Japan's largest cities had been attacked, with 180 square miles of urban area destroyed. Conservative estimates placed civilian casualties at least 330,000 dead and 500,000 injured, with 8.5 million people homeless. Japanese industrial production had collapsed. Aircraft manufacturing fell to 10% of 1944 levels. Oil refining ceased entirely after precision raids destroyed storage facilities. The dispersed cottage industries that produced components for military equipment were buried under the rubble of residential districts. The psychological impact exceeded physical destruction. Prince Fumimaro Kono, former prime minister, wrote in his diary, "The people are exhausted, industry is destroyed, and we face starvation. The B-29s have accomplished what our enemies' armies could not. They have brought the war home to every Japanese citizen." American losses totaled 414 B-29s from all causes, with approximately 2,600 airmen killed or missing. The loss rate of 1.38% per sortie was far below the 5 to 10% rate suffered by B-17s and B-24s over Germany. Most critically, the command had exhausted its supply of incendiary bombs. Japanese response evolved rapidly. Fighter pilots developed ramming tactics, deliberately crashing into B-29s in suicide attacks. Anti-aircraft batteries repositioned to engage low-altitude targets. Civil defense units distributed sand and water buckets to residents, though these proved useless against napalm. Japanese propaganda began preparing the population for the decisive battle for the homeland. The Okinawa invasion in April forced a temporary shift in B-29 operations. From April 17th to May 11th, the super fortresses flew 2,114 sorties against Kyushu airfields to suppress kamikaze attacks on the invasion fleet. These tactical missions frustrated LeMay, who believed continued strategic bombing could force surrender without invasion. May 23, 1945, marked the resumption of strategic firebombing with new intensity. LeMay now commanded 510 operational B-29s organized into 5 bombardment wings. The 58th Wing had transferred from China, Burma, and India, and the 315th Wing had arrived with specialized radar-equipped aircraft for night operations. The May 23rd raid sent 558 B-29s against Tokyo, the largest formation yet assembled. Pathfinders marked multiple aim points across the southern districts untouched by the March raid. The bombers dropped 3,646 tons of incendiaries, creating multiple firestorms that merged into a single conflagration covering 5.3 square miles. May 25th brought the climactic raid. Nearly 500 to 600 B-29s returned to Tokyo, targeting the governmental district around the Imperial Palace, though the palace itself was off-limits by order of Secretary of War Henry Stimson. The surrounding ministries and military headquarters were legitimate targets. The raid destroyed another 16.8 square miles, effectively eliminating Tokyo as a functioning capital. The sight of hundreds of super fortresses over Tokyo in daylight shattered Japanese morale. Pilot Tsuneo Hitoshi of the 244th Fighter Squadron later wrote, "We could only watch helplessly as they destroyed our city. There were too many to attack, like trying to stop a tsunami with your bare hands." By late May, 21st Bomber Command was launching raids of 500 or more B-29s every other day. Yokohama, Kawasaki, and smaller cities fell to the incendiary onslaught. Japanese air opposition had virtually ceased. Most remaining fighters were being hoarded for kamikaze attacks during the anticipated invasion. By August 1945, the B-29 force had grown to over 1,000 aircraft operating from the Marianas. 66 of Japan's largest cities had been attacked, with 180 square miles of urban area destroyed. Conservative estimates placed civilian casualties at least 330,000 dead and 500,000 injured, with 8.5 million people homeless. Japanese industrial production had collapsed. Aircraft manufacturing fell to 10% of 1944 levels. Oil refining ceased entirely after precision raids destroyed storage facilities. The dispersed cottage industries that produced components for military equipment were buried under the rubble of residential districts. The psychological impact exceeded physical destruction. Prince Fumimaro Kono, former prime minister, wrote in his diary, "The people are exhausted, industry is destroyed, and we face starvation. The B-29s have accomplished what our enemies' armies could not. They have brought the war home to every Japanese citizen." American losses totaled 414 B-29s from all causes, with approximately 2,600 airmen killed or missing. The loss rate of 1.38% per sortie was far below the 5 to 10% rate suffered by B-17s and B-24s over Germany. The B-29 campaign fundamentally changed warfare. For the first time in history, strategic bombing had brought a major power to the brink of surrender without ground invasion. The United States Strategic Bombing Survey concluded that Japan would have surrendered by November 1945 without atomic bombs or invasion solely due to the conventional bombing campaign and naval blockade. The campaign's effectiveness stemmed from multiple technological advantages. The B-29's range allowed strikes from bases beyond enemy reach. Radar bombing capabilities enabled accurate attacks through cloud cover. The M69 incendiary bomb proved devastatingly effective against Japanese construction. Central fire control systems allowed reduced crew sizes, maximizing aircraft numbers. The 20th Air Force's organizational structure provided a model for the independent United States Air Force. Established in 1947, strategic bombing had proven itself as a distinct form of warfare, requiring specialized equipment, training, and command structures separate from traditional Army operations. Training programs had produced thousands of qualified sonar operators, bombarders, and maintenance specialists. American naval schools were graduating new personnel at rates Japanese facilities could not match, creating cumulative advantages that increased over time. The B-29 campaign against Japan represented the convergence of industrial might, technological innovation, and strategic adaptation. American industry had produced the world's most advanced bomber. American science had developed incendiary weapons perfectly suited to the target. American strategists had adapted tactics to maximize effectiveness while minimizing losses. The transformation from Hansel's unsuccessful precision bombing to Lame's devastating area attacks demonstrated the importance of tactical flexibility. Pre-war doctrine had emphasized high-altitude precision strikes against specific industrial targets. Reality forced adaptation to low-altitude area bombing that destroyed entire urban industrial complexes. The moral implications would resonate for decades. Lame himself acknowledged, "If we'd lost the war, we'd all have been prosecuted as war criminals." The deliberate targeting of civilian areas marked a departure from earlier American bombing policy and established precedents that would influence nuclear strategy throughout the Cold War. The campaign validated Billy Mitchell's interwar theories about air power's decisive potential. Wars could now be won from the air, striking directly at an enemy's industrial base and civilian morale. This reality would reshape international relations and military strategy for generations. On August 6, 1945, a single B-29 named Enola Gay dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. 3 days later, Boxcar delivered the second atomic bomb to Nagasaki. These specially modified silver plate B-29s represented the campaign's ultimate expression, a single aircraft delivering destruction equivalent to hundreds of conventional bombers. Japan surrendered on August 15, 1945. On September 2nd, as Japanese officials signed surrender documents aboard USS Missouri, 462 B-29s flew over Tokyo Bay in a final display of American air power. The formations stretched for miles, their shadows darkening the waters below. General LeMay received the Distinguished Service Medal for transforming the B-29 force into history's most effective strategic bombing campaign. He would later serve as Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force and architect of Strategic Air Command during the Cold War. The B-29 continued serving through the Korean War, where they again demonstrated strategic bombing's effectiveness. The last operational B-29 was retired in 1960, but the aircraft's legacy endured. Every modern strategic bomber incorporated lessons learned from the Super Fortress campaign against Japan. In the ruins of Tokyo, Osaka, and 64 other Japanese cities, concrete monuments mark areas destroyed by B-29 raids. These memorials serve as reminders of the 10 months when silver bombers ruled Japanese skies, systematically destroying a nation's ability to wage war. The strategic bombing campaign against Japan proved that wars could be won through air power, that industrial capacity could overwhelm military resistance, and that technology could provide decisive advantages in modern conflict. The B-29 Super Fortress had not just bombed Japan into submission, it had fundamentally changed the nature of warfare itself. Curtis LeMay's transformation of bombing tactics from ineffective high-altitude precision attacks to devastating low-altitude area raids had demonstrated that victory required not just superior technology, but the willingness to adapt strategy to reality. By the time Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's surrender, the B-29s of the 20th Air Force had made that surrender inevitable through the systematic application of strategic air power on a scale the world had never seen and will never see again.